This podcast contains explicit content and is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Don't say we didn't warn you.
Hello and welcome. My name is Madison.
I'm Hannah.
And you are listening to Who's Knocking?
Yet another true crime podcast.
Yeah.
Hello again.
Yeah, hey. Here we are. We're back at ya. Another episode. Interesting. This episode is gonna be a little bit different. We're going down the paranormal road.
I'm excited.
We've had a couple of people request paranormal stuff, and it was our intention to do some paranormal stuff as well.
Yep.
So I decided to go for it. So I'm pretty excited about this. And this probably could be 2 episodes, but I'm going to try to squeeze it into one so that if people are like, no, we hate paranormal stuff, then we don't have 2 weeks of it.
Okay. But let us know if you like it.
Yeah.
Or don't, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just say, like, during this intro, like, I received a pretty interesting email recently, or we did at our email at hello@whosknockingpodcast.com. A person, I won't like disclose who this is in case they don't really want to be named or whatever, but a person reached out who is somewhat close with some of the people involved in the Adam Strong case. And this person was like really nice and told me some extra information about the Adam Strong case that I'm intending on looking into. And we went back and forth for a little bit, and they were super nice and seemed to like the podcast that we put out on Adam Strong, which is really, really cool to hear that somebody involved with other people within the case was happy with our portrayal of that. I was like really pleased to hear that. But all I'll say is, like, if what this person is saying is true, which I, obviously have to look into, but Adam Strong is far worse than we had originally even thought.
I'm literally not surprised at all.
And we thought he was horrific.
Yeah, I already thought he was really bad.
So I, would really like to look further into this and do a little bit more research, but shocking information, to say the least. And it's weird, like, anybody can email you and say whatever they want. So I take normally everything with a grain of salt if you are, just meeting somebody online.
Yes. We are children of the internet era.
Yeah.
We were raised with a lot of caution around that.
Yeah, a lot. I guess it's like, who are these people who are just like meeting people online and being like, tralala, like, this is my boyfriend online now, like that
people did that and they turned out to be murderers.
It's shocking how many people did that
and got murdered.
And like, I understand how all these kids get, like, remember, like, To Catch a Predator?
Yes, that's what I was thinking of.
Hansen, what's his name?
That was a good show.
Chris
Hansen, yeah.
Chris Hansen. I got really into that show for a while.
Such a good show. I think we used to watch it together.
Did we?
I think so, yeah.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like all these like coming in with like beer and pizza. And it's like, oh, 14. It's like,
hey, I'm just upstairs. Like the kids always
it's like
come on in. And then it's the guy.
Oh, yeah. And I understand how kids fall for that kind of stuff because they're dumb, but like,
yeah,
grown adults.
Yeah.
It's whack.
Anyways, lots of predators on the internet, so stay safe.
Yeah, clearly. So that I thought was like super interesting, and hopefully we can find some more stuff and maybe do some sort of follow-up. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it would be cool if we did follow-ups on episodes.
Yeah.
We got new information.
We could do that. I mean, depending on if we had enough content to do like a whole episode, maybe we do some sort of live somewhere to chat about it. And if people are interested, they could join. I don't know. We got to start some sort of little community here. And if anybody has thoughts or opinions on that, share it with us. I don't know. We don't know what we're doing. We're just making it up. So, yeah. that was super interesting. And that's all for my intro. I will stop now. Okay, let's start with the episode.
I'm so excited.
This is a paranormal episode. This episode is about the Skinwalker Ranch.
Okay.
Now this is
you already know from the name. It's gonna be creepy.
So creepy.
Why was it called that after creepy things happened there, or was it called that originally? Because
it is not called that originally. That is a name given to it due to
that's fine then.
Situations that occurred on that ranch. And okay, in terms of rating this, I don't know how to rate it because I personally don't really find it scary.
Yeah.
I'm also super skeptical of a lot of stuff. So in terms of like the like fear factor of it all, I'm going to say like 4, but I think it's like super interesting. And if you're into like UFOs, paranormal stuff,
yes,
like maybe even into like the Bigfoot type. Do you know anything about Bigfoot?
Yeah, a little bit.
I didn't know anything about anything before I started looking into this.
Is that in this?
In a way, maybe.
Okay.
In a way, maybe not.
We're getting a lot. We're getting a lot here.
We're getting a lot here.
Cool.
So with that, here is a story of the Skinwalker Ranch. So the Skinwalker Ranch is located just southeast of Ballard, Utah, in West Uintah County, and it borders the Ute Indian Reservation. It is approximately
definitely haunted.
I think many people would agree with you. It is approximately 512 acres, and it has become famous for paranormal and UFO sightings. For this episode, I read the book called Hunt for Skinwalker, and it's by a guy named Colm A. Keller, and he put PhD beside his name, so I guess he wants you to know that. And
they always do, Madison.
Yeah. And George Knapp. So Colm is a biochemist who specializes in cell and molecular biology. And you will hear a lot more about him later. He's a central character in the book, so I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay.
And George is an award-winning investigative journalist and conspiracy theorist.
I like that.
Who became well known in the 80s for reporting on the story of Bob Lazar. Do you know Bob Lazar?
No.
So I really don't know very much about him. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I started listening to it, and then it kind of went over my head, and I don't know. I feel like you got to be like somewhat knowledgeable about kind of stuff, but I think the main claim is that he claims that he worked on extraterrestrial UFOs and stuff at Area 51.
Oh, that's crazy if it's true.
So he's got a lot of stories, and he's got, I don't know, it's a weird situation.
Okay.
But anyway, he's got a lot of stuff. And so these guys wrote a book based on their experiences at the ranch. And so that's like kind of the main perspective I'm going to be taking, but I also used a lot of other sources, and also I'll get into a little bit about criticisms of the book and of their views and whatever.
Okay.
And this guy is apparently a conspiracy theorist. I am not well versed in the conspiracy theorist realm. I don't believe in conspiracy theories or not believe in conspiracy theories. I just haven't really, I've heard of a few of them, but I'm not typically prone to like believing in things as a grand conspiracy. I more think usually things that like something happened and then like the levels of covering up of like maybe compounded or something. I don't know. But I think conspiracy theories are super interesting, and I love hearing about them.
They are interesting.
So setting the stage there. So Skinwalker Ranch is located in the middle of the Uintah Basin. And since about 1950-ish, there have been thousands of UFO sightings in the Uintah Basin, making it one of the biggest hotspots for UFOs in the world.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard certain areas of America are really known for it.
Yeah. And you like the main question is why in this specific location? And I think we'll get into what some people believe is happening.
Yeah. I'm sure there's explanations for it.
One spot. It kind of feels like the spots are kind of random, but it's like there'll be a hotspot for it based on their theory.
Right.
So according to Colm and George, the authors of the book, approximately 90 to 95% of UFO sightings are misidentifications, which makes sense. But even with those numbers, there still remains a very large amount of unexplained sightings in the Uinta Basin.
Yeah.
The numbers would be in the thousands, maybe even tens of thousands at this point.
Okay.
So somewhere along the way, in about 1951, a retired teacher named Junior Hicks started to document sightings. And the first known sighting was by a teacher and a group of about 30 students who all claimed they saw the same thing.
Okay.
It was a very large cigar-shaped object sitting on the ground. So it was on the ground. And since then, Hicks started to study the phenomena, and he took accounts from locals and like gathered a lot of them. And by the 70s, he'd cataloged more than 400 sightings that he believed were credible. And this was after discounting thousands of others that he believed could be explained.
That's a lot.
It's a lot for a very, very small specific area. And he said that a lot of the people who spoke to him, and you'll see a lot of this in the story, for whatever reason, a lot of these people do not want involvement. They do not want their names out there. They want to
I think that
anonymous.
makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I would have thought that a lot of, but I guess it's probably a lot of the fake sightings are people who like want notoriety for it.
Yeah.
But it just seems more credible when people are like, don't put my face on this.
And I also think that like sometimes if you do experience something that's like very creepy, you don't want to think about it and put it out there and repeat it necessarily.
Yeah. And especially too, if it like scares you and you think that maybe it's going to like follow you or something.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I think I've seen an alien before and it was pretty creepy. So
do you really?
Yes, but I don't want to talk about it.
Really?
I'll tell you about it later.
Oh, that's so cool. Why?
I think I have. I don't know.
Well,
I have no like proof that it was. It was just like a weird feeling.
It's just really annoying that you've like seen ghosts and aliens and I've seen literally nothing.
Yeah, I've seen a ghost for sure.
And it's like I feel like I'm one of those people who like literally walk past a ghost and I'm
but
like,
you don't believe it.
Like,
yeah,
don't. And I'm like, didn't even know.
I don't know. I didn't used to believe in it. Like I never believed in ghosts until I lived in a haunted. I lived in 2 haunted apartments and I never believed in it, but then it happened and now I really believe in it. So I don't know. Maybe you'll just encounter one. I don't know.
You need to go live in like a really old, I don't know.
Did you say like we city. Or you? Because no, I'm not going. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going there.
I'm just going to go plump myself down at Fox Hollow Farm.
Yeah. I mean, that could be fun. They seem
pretty chill over there.
Yeah. They don't seem that bad.
Anyway. So the big question that I was just asking before is why are other life forms so drawn to this one specific area? And Hicks, the guy who was studying it, he has a few theories. So one was that he thought that, or he mentions, the people of the region hold very strong religious beliefs. The area is made up of very devout Mormons and indigenous Native Americans. Primarily, it's the Ute tribe. And they're the indigenous people of the region. And they also hold really strong religious views. And then there's also the Navajo people who inhabited for a very long time. And I don't really know if they're still around, but it's mostly right now the Utes that are in the area. 2, the area has very large gilsonite deposits. And it's one of the only places in the world for that. Gilsonite is used in paints and varnishes and lacquers and insulating materials, and it's super valuable to humans. And he says he's even had reported sightings of non-human entities taking samples from the ground.
Okay. I've never heard of that material.
It's found in very few places, and it's just like I don't. It's not like an oil. I don't know if it is an oil.
Yeah, like
but
what's
it's something that you mine.
Oh, okay. I'm just wondering if it has properties of something that like an alien would want to use.
I guess it would depend on the alien.
Okay.
Like I don't know. If they're painting a lot, if they use a lot of varnish, then maybe. And number 3, the theory that he believes most strongly, and I think a lot of like you'll see in the story, a lot of other people kind of believe this one too, is that there is some sort of psychological experiment designed to see how humans react. And he claims that a lot of sightings include like light shows and displays, and there's been at least 2 seemingly credible incidents where people have claimed that they were actually abducted. Hicks believes that it's possible that aliens are coming down to this one location to perform experiments and conduct research on humans.
Oh, like aliens are doing the experiment. Okay. I thought it was
Yes.
more like other humans are doing that experiment.
Well, so I think the more like the skeptical, I think like one of the things that a lot of people start to think when they experience all these things is that like the military is doing experiments on humans or whatever, or it's like the kind of skeptical thing to think like it's not real. It's just like the military. They always think it's the military. I don't know why, but
or like the CIA.
Yeah, they think that like some government agency is like doing experiments on humans.
Yeah.
But they think that it's aliens who are like coming down and trying to do experiments on us, and then it's
Okay.
the story like then people will start doing experiments on them, and it's just like maybe like it's kind of going back and forth, which is kind of
because isn't that what humans do too? Is experiment on the aliens?
Well, and like try to document them and stuff, which is what we will see here.
Okay.
So I'll give you a little history on the Uinta Basin. It's got a pretty interesting history. The Uinta Basin is a vast, beautiful, but very challenging environment, and it's been inhabited by indigenous tribes for more than 12,000 years. But then in 1861, Abraham Lincoln created the Uinta Indian Reservation that encompassed most of the basin. And this was done because there had been so many armed conflicts recently between the Ute tribe and the Mormons who'd recently decided to settle in the area. And so they were fighting and fighting. And the specific bordering of the area meant that the Utes had to move from where they were in the beginning or where they were originally, which was like very vast greenlands or whatever. And they had to move 150 miles east to a much harsher section of the basin.
Typical government.
Very typical. And then they were promised that this land would remain in their possession forever.
Oh, and did it?
No, it did not.
Wow.
I was just about to ask, do you think it remained in their possession? Absolutely.
That's so fucked up.
It did not.
Wow.
Which is dreadful. So soon the white settlers found the rich deposits of black hydrocarbon, which would later be named gilsonite.
Okay.
And once miners started getting interested in the gilsonite, the land began getting parceled into smaller pieces and getting sold to miners, and generally in like pretty shady ways.
Yep.
Soon the miners petitioned Congress to turn more than 7,000 acres of the reservation land into public land so that it could be mined. And Congress was like, yeah, for sure, totally. And the indigenous people who owned the land were paid $20 per acre, and those who did not want to sell were either tricked or bribed or threatened into selling their land. So pretty typical story.
Right.
So this new designation led to a bunch of violence, as the Utes were obviously upset about this. And so naturally the conflict ensued, and extra military was brought in, and it was a huge mess. But very interestingly, and I'm really not sure like, by what mechanism this was able to happen, but this new designation, for whatever reason, inadvertently exempted those 7,000 acres from any official control or land enforcement.
Okay.
And I don't know if this was because technically it was like native land or whatever. I know like technically on land that is for like that is supposed to be for indigenous people. At least I think here, I think they have their own policing and stuff.
Okay.
So maybe it's because of that. I'm not quite sure, but it basically became this like weird little Wild West where people started putting up like saloons and brothels, and outlaws would go and hang out there because police couldn't do anything about it.
When was this?
This was, it would have been in the late 1800s.
Okay.
Yeah.
A simpler time.
Yeah. But it was like a big spot for like drinking, and like all the soldiers would like hang out there, and like it was kind of like a no man's land. So like generally there wouldn't be like people hung out with each other.
You could just do whatever you wanted, basically.
Yeah, and like races mixed, which was like super controversial back then and everything.
Yeah.
So there was a ravine in the area that became the dumping spot for empty liquor bottles. And it became so full of liquor bottles that it got the name Bottle Hollow. And in the 70s, it was filled in with water. And then, like, this is just the icing on the fucking cake. But in the 70s, it was filled in with water and it was given to the Utes as an apology for the time that the government had diverted the tribal water for the Central Utah Water Project. So, like, one time the government took their water to, like, I don't know, put somewhere else. And then they're like, here, take this, like, this like shitty ravine that was so full of garbage, it got named Bottle Hollow, but now it's got water in it. Like, you can have it. Sorry.
Thanks, guys. We forgive you now.
It's like crazy how shitty they just treated these people. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, still do.
Yeah, for sure. But it's a big part, and you know, you'll see it's a big part of this whole story. So anyway, now the Bottle Hollow ravine is a popular fishing spot. Okay. And this is also kind of random, but it's located directly beside the Skinwalker Ranch. Mm-hmm. But this reservoir has also a bit of a weird and mysterious legacy of its own. Apparently, the Utes have always believed that the water is home to one or more large aquatic snakes.
Oh, love that.
So random. And there have been sightings of this creature by people, again, who wish to remain anonymous. And people in the area believe that these giant snake-like creatures are the reason for the unusually large amount of drowning deaths in this water. And there's scary. Also been, so that's just weird. To me, it's like, okay, just weird. Like, why are so many people drowning here?
Yeah, that is really weird. Are a lot of people drowning there?
An unusually large amount.
That is really weird. And are these drownings like never witnessed?
They seem to be sketchy. People think that there's large aquatic snakes causing them.
Okay, well, I take it back. I thought the snakes were like nice snakes.
No.
They don't sound that nice anymore.
Killer large aquatic snakes, which
that's not good.
Should not exist there. And apparently there's also been many sightings of unusual lights going in and out of the water. So today, Uintah County is home to little more than 35,000 residents, most of whom are white Mormons, and about 10% are Ute Indian. The region is unusually rich with hydrocarbon-bearing materials such as oil shale, tar sands, and coal. So it's highly populated with miners. But it's also highly populated with cattle farmers and ranchers. Okay. And this is where Terry and Gwen Sherman come in. So the Shermans purchased Sherman Ranch, which will later be called Skinwalker Ranch. But I guess in this time or this area, or for whatever reason, like, you bought a ranch, you called it your last name ranch.
Yeah.
So that's why it's called Sherman Ranch. They bought it in 1994 and they got a very fair price for it. So I think that's code for like a good deal. And they were very impressed by the property. They considered themselves very lucky to have found such a perfect home to settle in. They were super happy with it. The Shermans consisted of Terry and Gwen, and they had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. And the ranch, it would need a lot of work, but the family were up for the challenge. And they were just going to settle in and be ranchers. And I believe they were Mormons as well. And so they moved from New Mexico to like be somewhere that was like Mormon friendly and they could do their cattle ranching. They were cattle ranchers, and they would soon bring in Tom's herd of prize registered cattle to live and graze in the huge fields. Tom was a very skilled rancher and had a reputation for raising top quality Simmental and Black Angus show cattle. And he was really, really good at this. Most people, it's something like they lost like a certain percentage of their herd of cattle over like the winter or whatever. And he would lose like a much smaller percentage. Like, he was known to be a very, very talented cattle rancher. Nice. And basically the family's entire livelihood came from that herd. So needless to say, they really cared about this herd of cattle and they were well looked after. So when the Shermans first looked at the property, when they were looking to buy it, they noticed a few strange things about the ranch. For one, every door had several large, heavy-duty deadbolt locks on both the inside and the outside of the doors.
That's weird.
All of the windows were bolted and barred, and at either end of the home, there were large metal chains that were very securely attached to the walls. These presumably would have been to keep like big guard dogs.
Oh.
The Shermans definitely noticed these things, and they understood what this implied, which I think was fear. And they were happy with everything else, and they were happy with the price. So they just decided to assume that the previous owners were just overly paranoid people, and they just overlooked it.
Were they right?
That they were over. You'll see.
Okay.
I don't want to give it away, but
Fair.
The owners also included a really weird clause in the real estate contract, which was the Shermans basically agreeing that they would not dig on the land without any prior warning to the previous owner. So they're basically saying, you have to ask us if you want to dig on the land.
Why? What are they going to find?
And yeah, that's why it was so, it's like, who would put that? Can you even like legally bind that? Like that's, you can't sell somebody something and be like, you can't dig on it.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah. So they thought, we're like, that's super odd, but they're like, okay, that's really weird. We'll just ignore it.
Oh my God. Okay. Red flags.
The Shermans, however, would soon be very sorry that they overlooked these things. And it wasn't long into living at Sherman Ranch that they had their first unexplainable experience.
Wow.
It was very, very soon into, excuse me, I had a beef cabbage soup recently and it's all coming up. So shortly after moving into the new ranch, Terry started bringing in his prized Angus cattle. He began with the calves.
Can I just say right now that I really hope nothing bad happens to the cattle?
I'll just say, Hannah,
and I definitely don't think I'm right.
So many bad things happen to the cattle.
Aww.
And also, trigger warning to some dogs.
No.
Sorry, it's like included in every one of my episodes. So like terrible things happen to dogs. I don't like it, but like it just happens.
Okay.
And I also, okay, I won't go any further, but anyway. So
my dog, one of my dogs is with me as we speak.
Yeah, don't let him hear.
I won't let him hear. Cover his ears.
So on the day that he brought the first bunch of the calves, the whole family was there, and I think his Terry Sherman's father was there as well.
Okay.
And so they were out, putting cattle and stuff, and like they had the truck and whatever. And the entire family noticed this very large, odd-looking creature off in the distance.
Oh.
The animal approached and seemed super tame. Terry thought that it looked most like a wolf, but it was at least 3 times as big as any wolf, and it really didn't move like a wolf. Like,
oh my God,
he couldn't really put his finger on. Like, it was just like, you could tell it was not a wolf, but like, they're like, what? I don't know what else this would be. It's a fucking wolf.
Uh-oh.
So the family all stood there watching as this wolf thing got closer and closer. And Terry started to think maybe this is somebody's pet because it seems so gentle and tame.
Oh my God.
Finally, the creature approached very close to the family, and they noted its gray silver coat. It had huge muscles and these like weird piercing blue eyes that were like almost human-like. And it seemed like a weird calmness was felt by the entire family, and they like quietly observed this like super strange animal. And even I think they even like reached out and pet it, but it was kind of like everyone was like in a trance. Okay. And then all of a sudden the wolf leapt over to the pen, I'm air quoting, containing the calves, and one of the calves had its head sticking out through the bars, and it was like watching the creature. And all of a sudden the wolf grabbed the calf by the head and began biting it and trying to pull it through the bars. And Terry's like, okay, fucking no, not my cattle. And so he and his father started beating the wolf.
Whoa.
And they got a baseball bat and tried hitting it, but the wolf just barely seemed to notice that they were doing anything, and like, kept pulling at the calf, who's like screaming, and everyone's like, oh my God. And so Terry got his Magnum, which is, for people who don't know guns, like a very powerful handgun,
Okay.
from the back of his truck, and he shot the wolf from a very close range. And the wolf still appeared completely unfazed. And after a few more shots, the wolf finally released the calf. And then Terry got his rifle. So he just got another gun. This is a rifle, is like a hunting gun. And the wolf started looking at the family, still super unfazed. And Terry started shooting it with the rifle, and like flesh apparently began to fly from this wolf's body.
What the fuck?
But it just kind of walked backwards away and then like trotted off. There was no sign that it felt the bullets, and the family was just stood there.
And was the calf fucked up? Like when they looked at the calf,
I mean,
was
it had been bitten, yeah, but it was alive.
Like the bites were there. It was
yes. It wasn't nothing. Something injured the calf.
It's crazy.
So they're like, okay, the fuck.
Yeah.
And then it was only a few weeks later when Gwen had another run-in with this wolf thing. This time she was in her car, and I believe she's on the property at this point. I'm not actually sure, but it walked right up to her window, and off in the distance, she said she noticed another animal. This was a black and dog-like, and it was big, but not as big as the wolf-like thing. And she said that its head seemed way too big for its body.
Oh, like my dog.
Like, yeah, except for this is not cute. I don't know. This seems like creepy and really fucked up.
Yeah, it's creepy.
And so apparently Gwen sped off as quickly as she could, and the wolf thing chased alongside her for a bit and then just like eventually dipped. And so
weird.
They started asking their neighbors, like, are there wolves around here? And the neighbors apparently some neighbors told them that there were a pack of wolves that did live on the property. But then after the second incident, Gwen went to speak with somebody at the tribal office about the animals, and they said that there were no wolves in the area and hadn't been for a really long time. And they were like, you must be confused and you must have seen a coyote. And she's like,
definitely not. Yeah. But it doesn't sound like a wolf either, really.
No, but so to me, this discrepancy, like they talked to some neighbors and they said that a wolf pack lived there, and then they went and talked to the tribal office, and you'll learn later the Ute people will not step foot on the Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh.
And you'll see why. But I think
haunted, probably.
Like some other neighbors and people around do experience similar things that the Skinwalker Ranch does, whereas the Ute people do not go there.
Right.
And thus do not run into these wolf-like creatures. And there are apparently at the time there were no wolves in the area. I think they were reintroduced at another time, but at the time there were no wolves. So, sorry, I'm very pregnancy out of breath. So more strange things started happening in and around the home.
Okay.
It seemed like Gwen was constantly misplacing things that she deliberately remembered.
Typical haunting.
Setting down in one place or another. Initially, she thought that one of the kids was messing around with her, but then one day, Terry stormed into the house, super angry, demanding to know who had taken his post digger. And to those of you who don't know what a post digger is, I also don't know what a post digger is, but all you have to know is like it's a very large piece of equipment used to like dig holes to put posts in to deal with fences.
Okay, that makes sense.
And it's a huge like 70-pound piece of equipment. It's not like a little thing. And so Gwen and the kids who had been inside the house for at least 3 hours were all confused. Terry had been outside mending the fence with it, and he went to his truck to grab a wrench, and by the time he got back, it had disappeared, is what he said.
Weird.
And interestingly, like according to them, days or even weeks later, he found it in a tree.
That is really weird.
Which he clearly didn't put it there. And the same thing happened a few days later with a pair of pliers. Both times, the whole family helped look for the missing tool, but both times they were nowhere to be found. And then like later, it is found in the tree. It was then that Gwen finally admitted that she had been experiencing the same thing. As I said, she would put things down and it disappeared. One time she said she went to the bathroom to have a shower and she knew she brought a towel in with her. But when she got out of the shower, the towel was gone. And she's like, okay, maybe I didn't bring it in or whatever. But then later she found it in the freezer.
And I do not like that.
No, that to me is like one of the most creepiest things.
That's creepy.
The next occurrence happened when a nephew was visiting the family. Excuse me. So sorry. So all the guys were out working on the property. So that would have been Terry and his son and this nephew. And they saw some lights coming from what looked like an RV out in the distance.
Okay.
And they were like, oh, it's trespassers on the property. And Terry began to approach them to tell them to get off their property. And the vehicle began to move. And he was really worried because like there's tons of fences and like enclosures. And, you know, once you have a break in the fence, it's just a big thing to deal with. So he didn't want the RV to like go smashing through the fences. But so he started to approach it and the vehicle began to move, but it moved very smoothly over what would have been like a very uneven ground. And like, he was like, oh, that's too smooth. Almost as if it were hovering.
Oh.
And all the guys started to chase it. And as I said, like their biggest fear is that it would drive through the fences. But as they stood there, they saw the RV just seem to like leap over the fences instead.
Oh my God.
And when the RV approached the tree line at the edge of the property, they all watched as it rose up and flew off into the distance.
Whoa.
So this incident freaked the boys out. Needless to say, that nephew left and never came back.
Yep.
And it was around this time that the Shermans began to learn about what everyone else in town apparently already knew and thought about their property, which...
Okay, honestly, the fact that they're all experiencing it and at the same time is really creepy. It's not just one person.
And my like skeptical mind is like, okay, yeah, but they're all like one family. Maybe they're just going to say this for whatever reason. But I think
but if everybody in the area knows about it and the last owners had like the chains and everything.
Yeah. And it's weird because the last owners later, I'll tell you, like they claim that nothing ever happened, but it's like, why did you have all those locks then?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Like that's literally, there's an explanation for that. You wouldn't just have that.
And apparently too, the people who owned it previously, they didn't live on it or work on it. And that's why it had kind of gone into like a state where like needed a lot of work.
Yeah.
They had like owned it. And I think maybe they were renting out some of the land to other people for like cattle or whatever. I don't know that for sure. But I know that they were not living on it. They were just like kind of maintaining it.
Yeah, obviously they didn't want to live there.
And like perhaps it's because they experienced some of these things. I don't
know. I wouldn't want to live there.
They are unfortunately dead now, so they don't have anything to say for themselves.
Damn.
Yeah, so as I was saying, everybody in the town already knew about this property, which to them at the time also bore the name Skinwalker Ranch.
No, did it now?
It did. And here's why.
Yeah, okay, tell me.
Well, first I'm going to tell you a little bit about Skinwalkers. What is a Skinwalker, you might ask?
I would love to know.
I'll tell you. So in the Navajo and Ute culture, among many other indigenous peoples, Skinwalkers are one of the most feared entities, apparently.
Yeah, the name is very scary.
They are said to be evil, shape-shifting witches, able to transform into or wear the skin of any animal. And wolves seem to be the most common.
I think I've heard of these before.
It's possible. I had not heard what a Skinwalker was before learning about the Skinwalker Ranch, but I learned about the Skinwalker Ranch years ago. But it is said that Skinwalkers are usually corrupted medicine men. So it's like people who were medicine men and then they like become evil for whatever reason. And so then they become a Skinwalker. And so that's kind of like the dichotomy. Is that the right word? Like the medicine man versus the Skinwalker.
Oh, like it's kind of like
they're like opposite.
It's like the dark passenger kind of thing.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know what that is.
It's from Dexter.
Oh yeah, I haven't. I started Dexter. I never finished it. I don't know why.
I would have thought you'd liked it.
I know it's like right up my alley, so I don't
Yeah.
know what happened there, but that was like 2013, and I was
It gets bad, but the first few seasons are really, really good.
Yeah.
And then the 5th season has a good twist.
Unpopular opinion, maybe, but I think most shows should just be cut off after season 5.
Yeah.
You've had your run.
Most of them get really bad.
Yeah. Anyway, so apparently becoming a Skinwalker requires this initiation ritual.
Okay.
And it requires that a person must kill a friend or family member, usually a sibling, in order to become a Skinwalker.
Why would anyone want to do that?
Because they're evil.
Okay.
They're just evil people or evil witches, basically.
Got it.
Skinwalkers are said to have powers. They can read people's minds and control their thoughts. They can acquire like superhuman speed and strength. They can also cause disease or illness or destroy property and even cause death. There is a long history of Skinwalkers among the Navajo people in particular. So I'll give you a little history here because it's pretty interesting. In 1864, the Navajo people were removed from their land by the U.S. Army again.
Of course.
And they were moved on foot to New Mexico. And it is said that this move and all of the issues that came from it caused a large number of Navajo people to become Skinwalkers.
Oh.
And those Skinwalkers terrorized the rest of the tribe.
Is that how like Americans became serial killers? Like that's
maybe.
their version, American version of it.
It basically is like being a serial killer, like among the like indigenous theories or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just interesting because very like it's like witches and like, you know, it's their own like little witches situation. Like like what happened in Salem and everything, you'll see. But anyways, 4 years later, the government admitted their mistake and allowed the Navajo people to return to their land.
That's nice.
But the Navajo people were convinced that there were still witches living among them, which caused a lot of unrest in the community and led to the Navajo witch purge of, I think this was 1878, which is exactly what it sounds like. It was 40 Navajo people who were suspected of being witches were rounded up and killed.
What was do you know like why they were suspected of it?
I would assume that it was like kind of the same as like what happened in Salem. People who they thought were weird or whatever, they were like, "You're a witch. We're gonna burn you." Okay. And like maybe some of these people were doing bad things. Who knows? But I doubt all of them were witches. Usually during witch purges, a lot of innocent people get thrown into that kind of mix. That's just a guess of mine.
Yeah,
but they killed 40 people over this witchery stuff. So the Ute and Navajo tribes have lived in the same vicinity for a very long time and had a varied history with one another. And now, look, I went to many sources to get this information, and a lot of it had like little differences, little varying differences. Mm-hmm. So this is what I found to be the most repeated. Please correct me if I'm wrong about this, people of YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. But it was at one point that the Ute people began capturing Navajo people and selling them as slaves. And that led the Navajo to put a curse on the Skinwalker Ranch land and surrounding Ute territory. And so
it definitely seems cursed. So that tracks.
Yeah. And apparently like the Ute people were like in with the government and on the government side. So that's why they were against the Navajo people. Like there was some conflict and back and forth, and it's like, who knows who started it? I'm not sure.
Right.
And so the giant wolf-like creatures that the Shermans saw on their property would have been an example of the Skinwalkers. And that's why the Ute people do not allow their own people to go on that land because of the curse. And typically Skinwalkers, according to them, only really bother indigenous people or Native American people. But clearly we're seeing, if we are seeing Skinwalkers, they are bothering white people. So it's kind of leaking over, I guess.
Yeah.
And so what I was saying was these like wolf-like creatures would have been an example of a Skinwalker. Although I'm sure some people would see it and be like, it's Bigfoot. which is
I
where
don't
you
think
also
so. Bigfoot stands on like two legs. He's not.
Yeah, but I think this wolf-like creature like could have, and like I think you do get a lot of crossover. I think there's a lot of people in the area who claim they see Bigfoot, and then like people are like, no, that's a skinwalker, whatever. Like they're kind of similar looking, mysterious entities. I don't think we'll really get into a lot of Bigfoot stuff, but I started looking into a lot of Bigfoot stuff, and it's kind of weird.
You should tell me about it.
Yeah, I will. Maybe we'll get into it.
Okay.
And yeah, so apparently there's been a lot of like white families encountering large, hairy man-like creatures that like run alongside their cars.
That's really creepy.
So it's like, and
they sound like they don't do too much damage, at least at this point. Like they're just kind of there, other than the cattle.
Yeah, it's unclear, and it seems like they like create they apparently. And I read this in only one place, but apparently if you're a skinwalker, you can only transform like 4 times ever. So it's like a really rare occurrence. And they are said to be super evil, but at the same time, like they really didn't do, that one tried to like kill the cattle, but
yeah,
other than that
bad so far.
They kind of just seem to like lurk about.
But maybe that's because they're white, so they're not.
That's true. And that's what I was just starting to think, like maybe it's because they're not like the curse was not put on the white people of the area. The curse was specifically for the Navajo people.
Yeah.
Or this curse was specifically for the Ute tribe. So maybe they just like creep out white people, but like do actual damage within their own communities.
Right.
Or maybe they're not real at all. I don't know.
White privilege once again.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. So back to the Shermans. Terry had started to walk around the property at night in an attempt to figure out what all this was about. And
I wouldn't do that.
I would.
I walk around at night
I'd have a gun. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, everyone has guns.
Yeah, there is. He's got 2 like within arm's reach.
Yeah. Okay.
But clearly they didn't really seem to do much. They did like the skinwalker, the wolf thing did walk away, but like there was no blood. But one night when he was doing his like nightly walks, an aircraft appeared out of nowhere. And he said it was approximately 30 to 40 feet long and completely silent.
So creepy.
And it was creating multicolored lighting that he could see brightly in the snow.
How close was it?
Close enough to see. I don't really know, but like close enough to see, but like
somewhat in the distance. Okay. It wasn't like right there.
It wasn't like in his face. But it was like on the property in the sky. And he said that it looked or felt like the aircraft was searching for something.
Oh.
A turning point for Gwen happened one night when she was home alone. Terry was away for a few days and the kids were both staying with friends, and she was driving onto the property and noticed a giant triangle in the sky with matte black wings that created multicolored lights on the ground. And the triangle thing hovered over her car as she drove in.
Oh, creepy.
And so later that night, and this triangle, specifically triangle shaped hovering object is seen multiple times by multiple people. Later that night, Gwen was in the kitchen and she looked out the window to see another RV type vehicle. Inside the vehicle, she swore she saw a person sitting at a desk in what looked like a black uniform with some type of headgear that I am assuming obstructed the face of this person or being. And this scared the shit out of her. And she called Terry and he's like, all right, I'm coming home. He drove through the night to come home. And
Shut up, Gary.
Terry. Just as a side note, in the book that I was reading, I started looking into that and I knew that they in the book, they like changed their name and they call them the Gormans and they call them, what are their names? Anyway, not Terry and Gwen. And I like was reading the book first and like going through and like writing notes. And then I had to switch it all because I realized they're not their actual names. And it's like, I would have used pseudonyms, but like their names are all over the internet. Like that's not a secret. So I don't know why the book, anyway, was very annoying. So like every so often I get a It's
Wait,
like
when
the
was
Gormans.
when was the book written?
The book was written, I think it was published in, it was the early 2000s.
Okay, so after the internet, so no
Yeah,
need to
yeah, yeah.
change their names.
No. And they like put themselves out there. It's not a secret. Maybe it was some sort of agreement with the book. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But anyway, he drove back, and the next morning, Terry and Gwen claimed that they saw giant boot prints in the mud outside, way bigger than human size. And
That's
okay,
so creepy.
Sorry, ding, ding, ding. My skeptical brain is like, okay, where's the pictures?
Yeah, I know. There's no photos of anything, right?
Maybe they exist, but I have not found them. And there is some explanation for like why they weren't able to capture some stuff, but
certain things, sure. Like if you don't happen to have a camera on you, but
even in this started happening in 1994.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but if shit like that was happening on my property, I'd have a camera around my neck daily.
Yeah, of course.
And some stuff I think you'll see it was like literally hard to photograph, and like they literally couldn't do it. But a boot print, where is the photo?
I know.
And maybe there is one. Someone just presented to me because I couldn't find it.
Right.
Anyway, so they saw the boot print. And this is when Gwen and Terry stopped letting their kids go out on the property at night. And also when Gwen decided to forego her evening walks, which she used to do. Apparently, the most common appearance for the family, and this is super creepy, were these oh no, this is not the creepy part. Later there are. But there were these very large orange structures that would appear on the western part of the sky in the evening and at night. And all of the family saw these large orange structures all the time. One time when Terry was looking out to the orange structure through some binoculars, he saw what looked like a window. And this was at night. And through the window, what looked like clear blue skies on the other side, as if it were daylight on the other side. And he noticed some black figures crawling out of what looked like portals and fleeing out into the night.
That's creepy.
And he found that particularly freaky. I would too.
Yep.
One time he was looking out at the orange structure while he was in his car driving off of the property. And he noticed that when he got to the end of the property, he was no longer able to see the structure. But when he reversed back in the way he had left, he could see it. And the structure reappeared.
Directly just the property that's cursed, basically.
Yeah. So he realized the structure could only be seen from his own property.
I would move. I would just move.
They do. So things only got worse for the family. They claimed they were seeing these large, this is the creepier part, these large creepy black figures that would roam around the property at night.
Absolutely hate that.
They would come right up to the house and knock on the window. And this is apparently something skinwalkers are known to do. And it was terrible for the family, and it made it really hard for them to sleep. Yeah. Obviously, but they ended up using all the deadbolts on the windows and the doors, and they bought huge guard dogs. So they ended up using all the stuff that they were like, oh, it's weird.
I hate that.
So like, here's a lesson to like, look into things.
If you ever happen to move somewhere like that, I mean,
like, just like look into the red flags. Don't just be like,
it's fine.
So one night, Terry noticed that one of his prized Angus breeding cows, was missing from the herd.
Aww.
So he went looking for it in the cold and snow for hours. Finally, he saw the cow off in the distance, and he went toward it, and she began to run very fast, which is strange behavior for a cow. And it might have been a he because it's a breeding cow. So I don't, but that's a bull. I don't know. Anyway, it was a big cow and it was running. I don't know the sex of the cow. He lost track of the cow, but continued to follow on foot until the footprints just stopped.
Ugh.
And he never found the cow.
Poor cow.
So I guess the assumption is like it was abducted. Aliens.
Probably.
Soon more cattle started to go missing. And even worse, they would show up in various places completely mutilated.
Hate that.
And their wounds appeared to have been cut with like a sharp instrument, and there was like a huge lack of blood, which to him, he said it looked like somebody had performed surgery on them.
All right.
So it didn't look like a predator had got to them, basically.
Yeah.
So we'll give you a little history of cattle mutilations.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of interesting. So apparently cattle mutilations have been a thing for a really long time, and they get lumped in with all sorts of like farm animal mutilations. And it takes generally various forms, but for our purpose, we think of cattle mutilation as like the killing and mutilation of cattle under mysterious and usually bloodless circumstances.
That's creepy.
And I've got like I'll put photos up here for just
You have
to warn
photos?
you of like of like random cattle mutilations. Often you see specific body parts removed, including ears, eyes, tongues, and very often genitals and reproductive organs, which for like, and
Sure.
this is where you really see the difference between like an unexplained cattle mutilation and like a predatory thing. Like usually those are typically things that start to go first when like regular predatory animals find a dead cow that just died for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like that'll be something that will be bitten off. But what makes like what when you include it in like the mysterious cattle mutilations, when it's like looks like somebody cut this with a knife, like it doesn't look like it's been chomped at or whatever.
Ugh.
Yeah, so in many cases there is a real cause like animal predation, but there in a lot of these cases too there's like this weird lack of blood that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Or weird smells, like chemically smells.
Oh.
Many people started to speculate things like satanic cult activity, which is always suspected and never true.
Yeah.
Or very precise excisions. Or
Do you think there are really just no satanic cults?
No. There maybe they're satanic cults, but like they just get blamed for
They get
especially
blamed
during the like satanic panic, which I've looked heavily into. There's a lot of shit gets blamed on satanic cults. Yeah. And like real Satanism like doesn't go out and like people who follow like Anton LaVey or whatever aren't going out and like mutilating cattle. They're just like having a lot of sex and like doing weird shit.
Oh, okay.
I've literally never heard of a real satanic cult that's actually out there like sacrificing animals and people. Like I'm sure they probably exist, but I think on like a much lower scale than people like to blame them for.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because it's very easy, like anything weird happens or like satanic cult. It's definitely a satanic cult.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just like think it's kind of a joke. It's kind of funny.
I know.
So people would think that it was like a satanic cult or secretive governmental and military agencies. And
kind of random why they would do that, but
well, yeah, maybe they're testing different diseases. I don't fucking know. I don't know what
like leaving the cattle around.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then, for our cases, the assumption is extraterrestrials.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, I think. So.
Yeah, I don't know, but maybe. The first documented case goes back to 1606 in London, okay. But the phenomena became very popular in the 70s when about 15 states, there were a string of thousands of cattle mutilations.
That's so weird.
Experts, veterinarians and law enforcement were brought in to investigate, and they concluded that a lot of these cases were not due to animal predation. And it was a pretty big deal because a lot of these ranchers believed that they originally were of the belief that some sort of governmental conspiracy or experiment was happening. And it turned into a lot of ranchers like shooting at low-flying government helicopters because they were so upset. And like it's a really big deal to lose like one entire cow. Like that's if you're a cattle rancher, but multiple, like that starts to like really eat away at your entire livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
So it's understandable why these people were upset. So a big investigation was launched by this retired FBI guy. Apparently he did a really shitty job, said it was all due to animal predation and called it a day. And then this was the mainstream narrative going forward. And apparently to this day, it's pretty political, and it's George Knapp, who I think is writing this part, and he's a conspiracy theorist, and I think he seems to think that like even veterinarians are too scared to come in and say like I don't think this is animal predation because they don't want to rock the boat. And so he thinks that a lot of stuff that gets labeled as animal predation is actually not, and like it's kind of a mess. But to this day, no one has ever been caught for or charged with any sort of cattle mutilation, and it largely remains a mystery and something that often gets closely associated with paranormal research. And there have been accounts of people saying that they saw a cow being beamed up or abducted by UFOs,
Oh.
etc. Which, like, how confusing for that poor cow. But maybe the aliens are cool to the cows before they mutilate them. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they are.
Doubt it.
Doesn't,
but like,
doesn't sound like they are. But
I mean, we don't do much better, to be honest.
That's true.
They're just going to be beef and leather. So now back to the Shermans. One of the last straws for the family happened when a big blue orb-like craft appeared on their property. And they were apparently a common occurrence for the Shermans. And they were also usually accompanied by a really intense feeling of fear and dread.
God.
And I think a couple of, like, there's a lot of that kind of feeling accompanied by a lot of things, but apparently specifically with these blue orbs.
Okay.
But on this day, and okay, you're not gonna like this, but on this day, the family's 3 dogs, they had a bunch of cattle dogs, which
they had cattle dogs,
which is like the perfect place to have a cattle dog.
Yeah, that's true.
Cattle ranch.
Oh, they're such good dogs.
Specifically what they're made for.
Yeah. They're not very big though. Those aren't very good, like, intimidating guard dogs.
And I don't know. I think he probably had cattle dogs because he had cattle.
Right.
And like specifically like as a herding dog. Because I think they also had other guard dogs at some point. Okay, but
that makes sense.
Anyway, they had a bunch of cattle dogs, and like Terry really liked these cattle dogs. They were awesome dogs, obviously. But this big orb came, and the dogs at one point ran off toward them and completely out of sight. And this was in the evening, and so Terry could hear them yelping out in pain.
Aww.
And then he was like, fuck. And then it wasn't until the next day that he went out to go find them, and all he found were 3 mounds of ashes.
Oh my God.
And in some places they say there was like goopy crap in them too. I don't know what the fuck happened to them, but like that's pretty weird.
They got vaporized.
Yeah, that's the suggestion. Yes.
Oh.
And so at this point they just couldn't take it anymore, and Terry decided that they needed to sell the property.
Good call.
Rumors around the ranch and all of its paranormal happenings had started circling, and even the odd person started to show up to see if they could come and explore. So Terry decided that he would take it to the media. He thought it would be helpful when trying to sell the place, and he just wanted it all to end. And it turns out this was a pretty good call. And at this point too, the Shermans had been like tortured. Kids were getting bad grades in school and couldn't go to school because they couldn't sleep.
It's time to leave.
Gwen had been fired from her job at a bank because she just couldn't sleep either. And like a bunch of cattle had gone missing, and like that was a huge part of how they made any money. Right? So like they were driven to the edge. So this is where Las Vegas real estate tycoon Robert Bigelow comes in.
Okay.
Robert Bigelow was a billionaire with a fascination with space travel, UFOs, and the paranormal. Since childhood, he had been consumed with these subjects, and now that he had a bunch of money from his successful career in real estate, he was interested in studying them properly. And so Robert created the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, also called NIDS.
Okay.
NIDS was created and funded privately as a way to bring scientific rigor to the study of paranormal research.
Okay.
It was NIDS, or Bob, who purchased Skinwalker Ranch from the Shermans for $200,000 in 1996.
Nice.
It seemed like the perfect location to set up and study all of the alleged paranormal activity and UFO sightings in one location. It was essentially their dream project.
Yeah, that's like the only person in the world who would actually want that property.
Yeah, and like is basically, if you're interested in studying paranormal activity, this is basically a lab setting to conduct your research. So the Shermans purchased another smaller ranch in the area, and they were very happy to be done with that place. They had lost 14 out of their herd of 80 cattle, which was a huge economic hit to their family. So they were just really happy to get their herd elsewhere. And that, like 14 out of 80 to lose in a span of 2 years, was astronomical compared to what Terry was used to losing year over year, which would have been much closer to like 1, maybe 2.
Right.
Terry, however, decided to stay on as the ranch manager at Skinwalker Ranch. He helped the crew of scientists and was there to make sure that the ranch was kept up with. And it seemed to me, what I got was that Terry was kind of a proud man, and he took a lot of pride in his work and his family. And he wanted to understand what was going on at Skinwalker Ranch and what had caused such devastation for him and his family. So I think he was very interested in like seeing what they came up with.
Okay.
And that's why he like stayed on and became involved.
I guess I'd be curious.
Because he's really involved. So Nids had purchased a number of cows, and Terry brought a few of his own for them to use as bait. And so this is very interesting. This whole assertion that Terry brought some cows. I was reading the reviews to the book that I read on Amazon, and one person noted that they were like, Terry was so upset that he lost all his cows, and like that's why they were moving and everything. Like, why is he bringing cows back?
Yeah,
to get like to be used as bait. They could not understand that.
That doesn't track.
It's unclear to me because reading it, I was like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But it is unclear to me. I think there exists the possibility that Terry brought either like cows that like for whatever reason you could. I don't know if you like have like a shitty cow that you can't use. I'm not sure. And it's unclear to me whether or not the cows that he brought over were paid for by the NIDS team, because I know the NIDS team bought some of their own cows just to chill at the ranch.
Right.
So to me, it makes sense if Terry was financially compensated for these cows, because that's what they were to him.
His job
anyway.
Yeah.
But it's somewhat unclear, and that remains like a point of skepticism, I'd say. And fair enough. So the team set up sensors, magnetic sensors, radiation sensors, and a lot of equipment in order to try to document these paranormal activities. Some members of the initial team included Colm A. Keller, who helped write the book. And the first team that started there was Colm and a veterinarian and a physicist, both of whom did not wish to share their names. And it seems that, like most people involved besides Colm, everyone kind of wanted to remain anonymous on the NIDS team. So I'll just refer to most of them as their job titles from now on, except Colm, who was very outspoken and wrote a book about it. So the team began by interviewing people in the area, other ranchers and members of the Ute tribe. And they learned that a lot of the neighboring ranchers had similar experiences. The team began by interviewing people in the area, other ranchers and members of the Ute tribe, and they learned a lot about the neighboring ranchers and that they had similar experiences. As the Shermans, unexplained cattle mutilations, sightings of floating orbs and triangles specifically. And the Utes had also seen these flying objects on many occasions over the last 10 years. And of course, as I mentioned from earlier, the Utes were big believers in skinwalkers, and they typically stayed far away from the cursed land in order to avoid them.
I would too.
Yeah, if I believed it, for sure. Although again,
you'd go just
I don't want to see. Yeah. I wouldn't go at night though.
Yeah, definitely not.
So we'll go through a little bit of this. Hey, bro.
Adorable creature emerges.
Just get all your licking into the mic, bud.
Yeah. Enjoy the mouth noises.
Okay, so Taro, you good?
Yeah, he's gonna listen.
You see his eyebrows wiggling.
No dog. Nothing happening to dogs in this section, because then he'll stay and listen.
No, just mutilated calves.
Okay, that's all right.
So March 1997.
I mean, he's okay with that.
He's cool with that? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
March 97, the team began to set up and figure out how they were going to go about their studies. Okay. Harry advised them that they should approach this as stealthily and as quietly as they could. Whenever he had encounters with weird stuff on the ranch, he got the feeling that whatever was out there was observing and studying them and trying to manipulate their minds. And whenever he or his family tried to capture or go after things that they were seeing, they would just vanish. So I think this is why we don't see a lot of photographs, or like
Yeah.
how they
I
explain
get it
the
though,
lack of
because
photographs.
but I get it because if there are these entities that are kind of like above and beyond our usual, you know, our usual perception, then it would make sense that we wouldn't be able to catch them on camera, maybe.
It's possible. It's possible. That's like the first
Possible.
thing I thought of was like, where are all the photographs of this? Seems
Yeah.
to be happening constantly.
At least the photos of the cattle and the footprint. Like there's a few things that
Yeah. Then they
you
do
could
seem to,
photograph.
like, the NIDS team seems to capture a little bit, and then we'll see like
Oh, do
then
they?
like not really anything of interest.
Ugh.
I'll get to like what they see.
Yeah, I'd love to know.
They have a lot of claims, but not a lot of proof. But then
But they have
there's
some
even more,
proof?
apparently. None that I've really seen.
Oh.
But I'll tell you their claims.
Okay.
So yes, pretty much as soon as the team set themselves up, they started to experience a lot of things. A very strange, unexplained cattle mutilation, and this was photographed, the cattle mutilation,
Ugh.
was found missing about 50% of its body. Its torn limbs were laid very neatly around its body, and there was also a complete lack of blood, and its ear was very precisely chopped off at the skull. And I
That's
think
very creepy.
the ear that was chopped off was the one that would have had the tag on it.
Oh.
The veterinarian on the team was certain that this could not have been the work of a predator. The same night, they also saw some large, strange looking animals off in the distance. Terry
Ugh.
shot both of them, but the team was never able to track them down, and they never found any tracks or blood. This was only the beginning. April 97, including the mutilated calf, 5 animals had gone missing from the ranch, the other
Okay.
4 without a trace. I don't know what mix of animals. Maybe there was dogs. I don't know. Sorry, Taro. But 5 in total.
Okay.
Later in April, 4 huge, and interestingly, this is why it's like, apparently they called them very expensive bulls. So I don't know why they're like using expensive breeding cattle. Why don't they just use some, like, I don't know, shitty other cattle?
Maybe the aliens don't want those shitty cattle.
What do the aliens know? Do the aliens eat beef? I don't know. I'm just saying, like, that is a
know.
point of skepticism
It does
that
seem
I
weird, yeah.
have not found an answer for. I feel like I found answers for a lot of this skepticism, but this one I don't understand. And very, very possible there's a very logical explanation for this, or that like something has been lost in the translation.
Right.
So these very expensive bulls, 4 of them, just disappeared out of their enclosure, which is weird because it's fenced in and there's no sign that they like barged through the fence.
Yeah, that is weird.
And they were found a little while later, all cramped into a very old metal trailer together and seemingly in some sort of trance. So they
that
just
is
like
weird.
happened to randomly look in this little trailer. And this is like a small trailer. Like how they all got crammed in there is very weird and suspicious.
Yeah.
When Terry banged on the side of the trailer, they all like came to and then started going nuts inside the trailer and destroying the whole entire thing. Later, the team measured the magnetic presence inside the trailer, and all the levels were very highly elevated, especially when compared to the outside. And this ended up diminishing over time. And when I say it was a magnetic presence, it was like things would just stick magnetically to the inside of the trailer. Weird. Where they wouldn't otherwise.
Weird.
That's like, that to me is like such a, like, how do they even get in? In May of 1997, the team had experienced a bunch of unexplained disturbances, all of them impossible to examine scientifically, so they say. They were really unsure what to make of all of this, and it was mostly the lack of repetition of events and how difficult things were to document that made it so difficult to study scientifically. You know, we're used to like the scientific method where like you repeat things and see if you get the same outcome after repeating an experiment a number of times, and you know, you have a hypothesis and conclusion, whatever. This was all just like random incidents that they couldn't even really document. So it was like really hard to study in the way that they were expecting to study. So they say. In June of 1997, about a mile away from the main camp, the team found a floating orb-like object Immediately, the dogs with them began to cower in fear, and
Aw,
everyone felt a dread wash over them. So they all
hate
say.
that. Yeah.
Colm tried to take photos, and one of the other investigators was horrified when he says that he began to hear a voice in his head saying, quote, "We're watching you,"
Wow.
end quote. He said he felt like something had taken over his mind and he was hearing whatever the hell it was through his mind. The guy who claimed to hear these voices in his head also claimed to see through a pair of binoculars a large, hairy, beast-like man figure with no face
Ugh.
that had crept out of the floating orb and walked off into the distance and vanished. Very similar to what Terry saw creep out of the orange floating things a year before.
Okay.
And so it's like, they just have this one guy saying that he saw all this, and like a couple people there kind of experienced the same thing. Interesting, but again, not really scientific.
Yeah.
July and August of 1997, the NIDS team spent most of this summer investigating the area in general. They claimed to see lots of lights appear and disappear quickly, but didn't record anything solid. One night when Terry and Gwen and their son were there alone, they had a really terrifying experience.
What are they doing there?
Terry is the ranch manager, so I think,
but they just keep going back there.
Yeah, well, I think like there's times where he needs help doing things like herding cattle or whatever. Like,
I just wouldn't want to go back.
Yeah. See, that's where I disagree with you. I think it'd be really cool. It's like you don't have to live there. You don't have to like have like your whole life run by it. That's true. And then you can kind of give some expertise. And he also was really good at ranching. So I'm sure they pay, and it's like this billionaire guy doing it. I'm sure he was paid well. It's like,
right.
Everything has a price, right? And at least they're like kind of used to it, and they have like the extra protection of this very wealthy scientific crew. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they're probably like, what the hell is going on? And like, very curious, right? I'd be so curious. Anyway, so apparently their cattle had been spooked so badly that a number of them had broken through the barbed wire fence. Actually, I think all of them, and they just scattered. And so Terry and his son tried to herd them back on horseback, and they noticed these small blood red balls that kept flying at them. And it was like they were trying to attack them. And so they thought that clearly this is what had been spooking the cows and why they had dispersed. It took them 7 hours to get the herd back together, and they lost a cow and a calf, and a few others sustained injuries. And when the family got back to the homestead, they noticed a baseball-sized blue floating orb. They watched it silently, and all claimed that they got the feeling that it was watching them.
Ugh.
By the end of the summer of 1997, the NIDS team was getting very frustrated. They had definitely experienced a lot of unexplained UFOs, and 2 investigators even claimed to see that faceless, giant, hairy man-like thing, and something akin to a giant Bigfoot. But their photography was sketchy at best. They had nothing quantifiable to show for their work. And the most they really had were photos of cattle mutilations, which were hardly anything new. It seemed like whatever was there was very good at evading capture, and they thought that they were basically being outsmarted by aliens. So the team decided it was time to set up surveillance cameras, which I don't know why they never did that before, but
yeah.
Okay, they decided to set them up. So they chose a spot that had been a hotbed for strange activity. They set up 4 cameras to silently record the entire area 24/7.
Okay.
For 1 year, they caught nothing. And then in July of 1998, Terry noticed that one of the cameras had been vandalized. It had been taken apart and the wiring messed with in a very precise manner. And after reviewing the camera that pointed at the vandalized camera, so there's 3 cameras and then another camera that faced the 3 cameras. So after reviewing the camera that was pointed at the other cameras that remained recording the entire time, they were super confused. Their other camera was recording the entire time that the other cameras had shut off, and the red recording light of those cameras that shut off at about 8:30, proving that that's when they stopped working.
Mm-hmm.
But they caught nobody or nothing actually doing the vandalizing. And it was like there was like duct tape wrapped around wires, and it had all been like removed like very meticulously. Like it couldn't have been like an animal that did it. It was
Weird.
removed. All 3 cameras remained recording for 8 months. Then in April of 1999, Terry was still working on the ranch, and he was there one day with Gwen, and they were looking over at the corral that they kept a few horses in. And suddenly Gwen noticed something very strange. There was a big, weird-looking animal in the horse corral, nipping at and bothering the horses.
Oh.
Terry and Gwen were horrified and described the beast-like creature as having a long and bushy fox-like tail with a body that looked kind of like a hyena.
Okay.
So fucking weird.
Yeah.
It was super gross looking and scary and had short, stubby legs. And as soon as Terry ran toward it, he said that it ran away and then vanished into thin air.
Okay.
This creature was seen by other people on the ranch, and they all gave the exact same description as Terry.
Weird.
So multiple people said that they saw something specifically hyena-like.
It's always weird when multiple people see it.
And there are no hyenas in Utah.
Yeah, and they're not like talking to each other about it.
No.
Like they're separately each. That's pretty weird.
Yes. So 1999 to 2004. It seemed like after this time, really after the summer of 97, not too much occurred. Okay. The cameras remained, but they maybe caught a dozen or so possible UFO sightings, although none of them could be ruled out as just like regular FOs, flying objects. And
that's pretty easy to, if it's just lights.
Yeah, exactly.
Could be anything.
And the weird animal encounters happened, but with no real frequency or repetition that they could document. And it seemed just impossible to study in any sort of scientific measure. Right. The team got together and they thought about what they could have done differently. As I had said before, when they first spoke with Terry, he advised them to be as stealth as possible to avoid using large machinery and stuff. He felt that whatever was out there was very cautious and didn't want to be captured. And anytime that he and his family tried to document stuff, it would just disappear. But the team did not listen to this. And it's kind of unclear that they could have, given their intended purpose, in my opinion. Like, I don't know how you study something scientifically without trying to capture it.
Yeah.
So, maybe like it just was a lost cause from the beginning. There was this theory that whatever is out there and in and around the Skinwalker Ranch, that it might be smarter than the NIDS team could have imagined. And maybe they were studying the humans that inhabited the ranch. And maybe they were better at it than the human science team.
Maybe.
And, that kind of goes with the theory that that guy Hicks had at the beginning, that like the reason this is like a hotbed for UFO activity is that like it's their own research project, and like maybe they just have like better equipment. So the team continued to study the land, and they started looking into other areas of the country that had similar experiences. There was another town in New Mexico called Dulce, and that also seems to be a huge hotspot for UFO sightings. Like the Uinta Basin, Dulce is a very small place, and it is home to mostly Native Americans, the Jicarilla Apache.
Okay.
Jicarilla Apache, I think is what we'll go with. Dulce lies in a valley, kind of like the Uinta Basin, and is surrounded by mountains like the Uinta Basin. The NIDS team spent some time in Dulce and came back with a lot of firsthand accounts of stories of eerily similar things happening on Skinwalker Ranch. The NIDS team continued to investigate at the ranch and do their thing, but still no real conclusions came out of it, although everyone involved knew and believed that this place was UFO central. So pretty much everybody on the NIDS team, after studying there, was like, this is UFO territory. There's a lot of shit going on here. So I'll talk a little bit about, I watched this interview with Colm, who was one of the writers of the book, and he had a lot to say about all this stuff. This book was published in 2005, And
Okay.
as a result of the book, the US military actually became interested in the ranch.
Oh.
There was a member of the Defense Intelligence Agency who apparently read the book while on a tour of Afghanistan and started to explore the idea that these entities and floating ships in particular could be considered a threat to national security. So they ended up sending a guy from the DIA to go and see the ranch. And he was only there for a few hours, but in that time, he claimed to have had an unexplainable experience himself.
Oh.
He claimed that he was like in one of the homesteads. So there's
Okay.
like a bunch of like little buildings on the ranch itself, and they call them homesteads.
Mhm.
And he claimed he was in there, and like he turned around and saw this like structure just like appear out of nowhere and then disappear.
Weird.
So that's his claim.
Okay.
Less than 1 year later, the DIA created a $22 million program called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
Okay.
There's a lot of, it's kind of sketchy trying to figure out how this all worked, but from what I gather, it started up in 2007 and ended in 2012, and Robert Bigelow and the Skinwalker Ranch appeared to have been involved. It was publicized in 2017, and in 2020, the government acknowledged that a similar military program was continuing called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force under the United States Office of Naval Intelligence.
Okay.
Since then, it has become clear to the public that UFOs seem to exist. Not only that, but the United States government seems to take these phenomena seriously and spends ample time and money trying to figure out what exactly they're dealing with. Here is Obama basically admitting that they're studying UFOs.
What is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is that there's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern.
Do aliens exist, or extraterrestrials, or other species that live in space? I don't know. I don't know anything about that. But
Yeah.
what we do know is that there are unidentified flying objects that have been found and studied and are yet to be explained, even after the military, the United States government has thrown millions upon millions of dollars at trying to research this, and still maybe they have answers that they're just not telling us. But
Yeah. That's kind of what I think.
it seems to be that unidentified flying objects exist. A lot of money has been spent trying to study them. That's what I know. That's what I know is fact. Everything else, there's a lot of theories, and the theories are super interesting, but that's what we know.
Yeah.
So enter Brandon Fugel.
Okay.
So we're still not at the end of the Skinwalker Ranch, because in 2015, the ranch was purchased by a company called Adamantium Holdings. And Adamantium, I don't remember what it is, some sort of like Marvel name or something, some sort of franchise I'm not interested in. I'm sure I'll sound stupid saying this, but anyway, it was like a weird name for a company.
Okay.
Well, it was a holding company, and it was purchased for $4.5 million. And this was at the time, Adamantium Holdings was a shell company of unknown origins. Years later, after the History Channel got a hold of the mystery owner of the company and convinced him to let them film a documentary series on the ranch, we did learn that the man behind Adamantium Holdings is a man named Brandon Fugel.
Okay.
And this whole thing about History Channel approaching him, this is Brandon's story. Like, this is what he says happened. Okay. And as we'll see, there's a lot of skepticism about Brandon. So I watched an interview with him, and like, this is what he said happened. So Brandon is a super successful Utah Mormon real estate billionaire with an interest in paranormal things. He says he was approached by some scientific advisors who talked to him about purchasing the ranch and continuing to study it. Brandon was convinced and said that he approached the entire thing in a very skeptical manner, thinking that in all likelihood it was there was a logical explanation for all of these phenomena at the ranch.
Okay.
Before acquiring Skinwalker Ranch, Brandon said he'd never seen a UFO or had any sort of paranormal experience of any kind. Brandon has since allowed the History Channel to document their studies at Skinwalker Ranch. He said that he had two major stipulations when he agreed to help create The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, the series.
Okay.
One, that only his team be used in the show. The History Channel could not put out casting calls or have any of their own scientists or experts or actors. And two, that they would not be allowed to contrive anything that didn't actually happen. And Brandon wanted complete veto power on all of the final cuts to ensure that this would be maintained. And this was them, according to him, coming to him because at the time, nobody knew who he was. They just knew that somebody bought the ranch and he wanted his identity to remain anonymous.
Okay.
And they were like, we want to do a show about the ranch and we want you to show your face and say who you are. And so he was unconvinced. And then finally they talked to him and he was like, okay, if you do these two things, then I'll do it. According to Brandon, this was agreed to. And so far, Brandon and the History Channel have put out 2 seasons of the show and it is very popular.
Okay.
Brandon says he's no longer a skeptic and he claims to have had many experiences with UFO and paranormal activity on the ranch. And random fact, Post Malone, recording artist, and alleged UFO enthusiast, got a tour of Skinwalker Ranch with Brandon. I've got some photos of it.
Really?
Looks like the two guys had a really good time. Looks like fun.
Okay.
You're
jealous. You want that tour.
I do. I'm just not a super popular rapper with face tattoos. I have another link. There's another little video I want to show.
Okay.
But it looks like they have documented some actual stuff. This is like take 3 minutes and watch this. This is an example of the show.
That's the tree that we found the cow by, right there.
Right out here.
Yeah.
Is that black object the cow?
Yeah, that's it, Tom. The cow is right here. What we'll do is go forward very slowly and watch what happens with her.
Watch how she moves. It's interesting.
Now you see the cow starts to get up. And I'm going to do this very slowly, frame by frame, so we can watch what's happening with her. So here, I can't help but also notice that there's something happening here.
Look at that. Look at that.
It looks like an object.
You can tell they're so happy they saw the object.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah. You don't have to watch. Like, that's basically like the gist of it.
that's something.
But yeah, like the show seems to be like really fun and like it's like a team of scientists and they like go out to different areas on the ranch. Remember, the ranch is huge. It's enormous.
Right.
It's 512 acres. So there's lots of different areas. And I watched this one clip where they got some indigenous guy. I don't know if I assume he was a Ute guy, but I don't think it really said. And like he came onto the land and like they did some ceremony to like see if it was okay to start digging because one of the reasons the digging is not cool there is like the native people believe that if you dig, like you could dig up something bad.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's kind of unclear what exactly.
I mean,
but
I wouldn't risk it.
that's like, I guess, like the theory behind them not wanting the Shermans to be digging on the ranch. But we know that they were because they were digging for posts or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, and like the guy who was doing the ceremony and stuff, like he's like, I don't know, guys, like I don't know if you should be digging here, but we'll see. But yeah, so the show seems kind of cool. I actually kind of want to watch it, but again,
Yeah, it seems pretty cool.
It's always another $10 and it never ends with these subscriptions. But yeah, it seems like Brandon's team is doing better with getting some stuff, but it's still like not so much evidence that it's like overwhelming.
Right.
But they claim that there's a lot of shit going on, and I guess you'd have to watch the series to know like what exactly they have. But that's basically the story. And I think it's important to also raise some skeptical voices about this whole thing. So one of the chief skeptics is a man named Robert Schaefer.
Okay.
Robert is a paranormal researcher and UFO skeptic. He is famously quoted as saying this, quote, "The phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch is almost certainly illusory. Illusory? Illusionary. Illusory. I think it's
Yeah.
illusory. Not only was the years-long monitoring of Skinwalker by NIDS unable to obtain proof of anything unusual happening, but the people who owned the property prior to the Shermans, a family whose members lived there for 60 years, denied that any mysterious phenomena of any kind occurred there." End quote.
Yeah. I mean, explain all the deadbolts on the doors and the chains for the large dogs.
Yeah, and I guess his take would have to be that like the Shermans made that up.
Yeah.
Because he also notes that many
Okay.
of the more extraordinary claims originated solely from Terry Sherman, who worked as a caretaker after the ranch was sold to Bigelow. So I think some of the main claims, because I also looked at some other people who were like had like skeptical, like random people who were like, this is why I'm skeptical of it. And a lot of it stems from Terry being the originator of saying shit was happening.
Yeah.
And like it's true, but it's like I don't think Terry like made any money off it. I think if anything, he lost money with his cattle being lost and like selling the
Right.
ranch. Like I don't know how much like fame or money he's gotten
Yeah. Like what
out
would
of this.
really be his incentive for that?
It is possible that maybe he thought he would,
Maybe.
but then just didn't. But like clearly, the biggest winner of anyone is Bigelow, who bought it for $200,000 and sold it for $4.5 million.
Yeah.
Although who knows how much money he spent on the investigation? Maybe in the end, it really
Right.
was a losing thing for him.
Yeah.
But that's one of the main things. And then there's like apparently like a cousin or a brother or something of one of the people who owned the ranch before, saying that they never experienced anything. But it's like, to me, it's sketchy because like you weren't there, so what do you know? And
Right.
also, if the whole deadbolts and everything were true, then probably they did. And apparently they didn't even live on the ranch, so there's that. And then on top of that, it seemed like it was a kind of a taboo thing to be spreading around in that community, especially in the
Right.
time that they owned the ranch. So maybe they were experiencing things but didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely debate about that. Yeah, a lot of the skeptics mentioned that the NIDS team were there for 10 plus years and basically had nothing to show for it. Fair. Then what is this? Then a number of people on the NIDS board who seem to be known pseudoscience pushers and or fraudsters, including a man named Hal Puthoff, who was an ex-Scientologist and directed a program that looked into psychic abilities. And like I think they kind of like propped up this guy who turned out to be a major fraud. And other like kind of adjacent people like that who sat on the board of NIDS. So people were like really nitpicky at that.
Yeah.
And then now there's a lot of people who criticize Brandon Fugel. And, you know, they frame it in this way. They frame it that Brandon Fugel bought the ranch and they believe that he did this intending to make a reality show. So I kind of said that it was a documentary series, but other people call it a reality show. And I think both of them have very differing connotations.
Yeah.
But like I watched this one guy's video and he talked about, he's like, it's just, you know, as soon as he started a reality show, then it's obvious that he's just trying to make money. So it's like, do we take at face value what Brandon says, that he bought the ranch in a very skeptical way, and then it was the History Channel that approached him and he said that he wanted everything to be super truthful, and you know, he originally didn't want his identity to be attached to the Skinwalker Ranch because he has like for 95% of his time and job goes into commercial real estate, and does he want to be associated with UFOs and some weird ranch? So that's why initially he did this anonymously, but they convinced him apparently to put his face on the documentary. I think he's one of the executive producers on the show. So it's like, you know, he said like maybe he's lying about that, but that is his version of events. And you can't read people's minds. So who knows? I like searched really hard to see if I could find any solid like skepticism of the ranch. And I did find, this was super nerdy. But it was like this like web, I guess it was like a meeting of these guys who like they recorded it and put it on YouTube. But it was like guys who like specialized in whatever field it is that uses and specializes in the like machines that they used on the show. And they were like explaining the science of like how they were using these like radiation machines and it was completely over my head, and I found it so boring that it was hard to pay attention.
Yeah.
But it was like machines that would like detect stuff underneath the ground and stuff.
Yeah.
But like it wouldn't make it past the shale. Like, and I had no idea what they were talking about. But they seemed to have seemingly legit criticisms of the way the machinery was used in the show. So I think, who knows? And who knows if they were just being dicks. They seemed really dickish. Or if it was, I don't know if they were like geologists or whatever. I had no idea. I really tried to get into it, but it was so boring. And it was like too many inside jokes that I didn't get. But they were like going through footage of the show and being like, they wouldn't use it like that. I couldn't detect what they're saying. So it's possible that they are saying that they're seeing all this like radiation and like their machines stop working and this and that when it's not really true. I have no idea. That's basically the story of Skinwalker Ranch. To this day, I think it's still being studied, and to this day, it's to me a mystery, but seems like there's something to it.
I would say so for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like when so many different people all have accounts of something happening, there's something to it. I don't know what that is, but
yeah, I would agree. And I think this is such an interesting spot specifically because there's so many different things that seem to be going on.
That's
like,
true.
There's orbs and UFOs, and then there's weird animal things. And, there's some people who would say it's a skinwalker and some people who say that there's a Bigfoot. And
yeah, that's true.
It's like just a lot of stuff. And clearly just a lot of money being poured into it too.
Yeah.
So I really don't know what I think about it. I think it can't be just nothing. It can't be just made up. I just think there's too much for me to think that it's just like a hoax or like a military experiment.
I agree that I don't think it's a hoax, but
the series too, the History Channel series that is put out, I've like read a lot of people's thoughts about it, and it's like either people are like, I love the show, it's so great, and like really believers in it, or people being like, it's totally fake, it's a reality show, blah blah blah. So it's hard to know anything, like what is what. Especially, and this is why I think studying like paranormal stuff and UFOs is like such a frustrating but also fascinating form of study, because it's just like, okay, maybe like we're studying it for years, maybe, I don't know.
And unless you really have like a ton of, money and equipment to put into it, it's hard to really know.
Yeah. And then then it kind of seems to like be, in a way, the like equipment is a hindrance to studying it.
Yeah.
At least in this case.
Yeah. So creepy.
So yeah, I'm super interested to hear other people's thoughts on this, people who listen to it. And typically we do like murdery stuff. And
I was going to say, this is kind of different.
There's no human murders. But I am really interested in getting into some more like paranormal stuff and like hauntings and stuff like that. So if that's of interest to you, give us a thumbs up. If you hated it, sorry.
We'll talk about more murders. Don't worry.
I think we'll mostly talk about murders, but like throw in a little something weird every so often.
Yeah, let us know if you're interested. And also let us know if you know a really good case of either paranormal or alien type activity, because we could use more suggestions.
Yeah, there's one thing that I'm interested in looking into, but I started to, and I found it a bit of a hard time. But the Dybbuk box, know about that one?
Nope.
Seems like it was like a haunted box. If anyone knows anything about that, send info my way, because I heard about it and it sounds super fucked and super haunted. That I would not want to be around. I'll tell you that.
Okay, yeah, me neither. I don't even know what it is, but I can just tell.
Yeah, it's fucked. Anyway, yeah, so please reach out to us on Instagram. Our Twitter is set up now. We have 10 followers. Like and rate and subscribe to us. That would be super dope. And please stay safe out there, because you never know
Who's knocking?
Bye. This podcast is produced in collaboration with Lost Line Media. Artwork by August Digital. Music by Matthew Cook.